Okay, so since this is the second part to my first trach suctioning video, I will just restate that I've performed the general procedures, and I ended my last video with performing hand hygiene. So I'll pick off from there, and I will put my mask and my goggles and my gloves on. These are going to be non-sterile working gloves, though, for this to begin with. Once I have my gloves on, I'm going to go ahead and open my new inner cannula, and I'm going to maintain sterility of it. I'm also going to open my tracheostomy care kit, maintaining sterility of the contents of that as well. Next, I am going to move on to my patient. I will loosen the oxygen collar, and then I will remove the old dressing and discard of that. So once I have removed that old dressing from the patient, then I can also remove my work gloves. I'll perform hand hygiene, and now I am going to put on a sterile pair of gloves. Okay. So now that I have my sterile gloves on, I am going to get my supplies from my kit ready. So I am going to lay out the drape here, and I am going to place this sterile drape shiny side down. So I'm going to move these materials this way a little bit, but in reality I couldn't be moving this stuff like this with my sterile gloves, so I'm going to time out and just move my stuff this way, so then it's a little bit easier to see what I'm doing in the video. But in real life situation, that would break sterility and I would have to restart. So I've laid my drape glossy side down. I will then remove all the contents from my kit. And once all the contents have been removed from my kit and I've laid them on my drape, I'm going to take my bottle of saline. I am going to pour half of the bottle in each one of the smaller containers of the kit. I will then place the 2 cotton swabs in the smallest container, or the smallest area of the kit. I will then pour my 2 packets of hydrogen peroxide into the larger area of the kit, and then I will place the scrub brush into that larger area as well. So I'm going to use this towel that I have laying down right here. That's going to be my patient. So instead of actually inserting the cannula for the trach, I am just going to sit it on the towel to show that it's either inserted into my patient or if I am removing it. So now I am going to remove the current cannula of the patient. I am going to use my non-dominant hand because it is going to be the hand that is not sterile, and I'm going to keep my dominant hand sterile. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove the oxygen collar, and then I will pinch with my pointer finger and my thumb, and I will pull in a downward motion out to remove the old cannula. If it is disposable, then I will discard of it at this time and then replace the oxygen collar. However, if it is a reusable cannula, I will place it in the area where I have my hydrogen peroxide located, and then I will replace the oxygen collar for my patient in both situations as well. So if it is disposable and I have removed it, then I can take my new cannula and I will touch it with my sterile hand because the cannula is sterile. And so I will remove it from its packaging. And when I insert it, I'm going to insert it in an upward motion, but I do want to maintain sterility of the cannula, so I will not touch it with this non-dominant hand. So I'll insert it in that upward motion, and then I'll make sure that it locks into place with the outer cannula. But I do not want to touch the inner cannula on anything that's not sterile while I'm inserting it. So I'm going to sit it here, and I'm just going to pretend that I have inserted it and maintained the sterility. And after I've inserted it, I will put the oxygen collar back onto the patient because I would have removed it when I began to insert it with the non-sterile hand. However, if this were a reusable cannula, it would be soaking in my peroxide. So I would take my brush, here's my brush, and I would scrub any residue from that reusable cannula, and then I would rinse the cannula in my saline in the larger compartment with the saline. That's where I would rinse it, and then I would take a piece of my gauze and a pipe cleaner if it was in my kit to make sure that I dry the reusable cannula. And then I would insert it in the same fashion by removing the oxygen with my unsterile hand and then making sure that it locks into place to the outer cannula with my dominant sterile hand. So once it is been inserted and the oxygen has been placed back on my patient, I am going to need to clean around the stoma of the trach. So I am going to take a piece of 4x4 gauze and I'm going to wrap it around my finger. I'm going to moisten it with some of my saline, and then I am just going to wipe around the stoma of the trach, and I'm going to wipe one swipe per piece of gauze from top to bottom and then discard of that piece of gauze. And then I will repeat that process as needed. Next, I will take my cotton swabs that have been in my saline and I will get any remaining crust or anything that is around the oxygen collar and then anything that is around the trach plate, and then discard of those as well. So now that I have cleaned my trach and the stoma, I am going to get another piece of 4x4 gauze that I have with me. I am going to moisten it with the saline, and then I am going to clean the oxygen collar. And after I clean the oxygen collar, I will dispose of that one, and then I will dry the oxygen collar. Now, I do want to make note of the fact that as I'm cleaning the trach and the stoma of the trach, I am going to be removing and replacing that oxygen collar as I'm doing those, in between those. So I'm not removing the oxygen collar and then leaving it off the whole time that I'm cleaning that. I will be replacing it as I work. So once that has been cleaned, there's no crust or anything, I am going to place a new collar, a new Velcro holder around the trach, pardon me. And so I will secure that around my patient and I will attach it to either side. So I'm just going to sit that here to show that I have put my new one on. And once my new one is secure, I can remove the old trach holder. So I will go ahead and remove of that, but I cannot remove it until my new one is secure. So once I have established that the trach holder is secure, I've removed the old one, I want to make sure that I can fit one finger between the trach holder and the patient's neck because I do not want it to be too tight. So after that has been placed, I want to take a piece of my split gauze and I want to make sure that the split end is facing up. And then I just want to place that underneath of my trach. I'll turn this way so I can show you how I have that. I want to place it under the trach plate. And then I am going to replace the oxygen collar after I have placed that as well. So I do want to take note of one thing that there was some points where I didn't exactly say that I was going to remove the oxygen collar or put it back. Between all these steps, I would be removing the oxygen collar and then replacing it just so that the client wasn't being unoxygenated. So that is it for the trach cleaning care of the client. Now that the client has been cared for, I am going to discard all of these supplies that I have. I'm going to remove my gloves in a proper manner and my goggles and my mask. I will perform proper hand hygiene. I will leave the patient with the bed in the lowest locked position, and I will leave them with their call light and any of their personal belongings. I will document the date and time of the procedure. I will document the reason that the suctioning was performed, and I will also document the color, the consistency, any characteristics of the mucus that was suctioned, and I will also document how the patient tolerated the procedure as well.